A per single mom was dragged out of her own sister's wedding until a millionaire walked in and called her his bride. The phone rang sharply in the quiet of the apartment. Lila glanced at the screen, her breath catching in her chest. It was Cassandra. She hadn't heard from her younger half-sister in months. She picked up hesitant. "Lila wants Benui bonds," Cassandra said, her voice flat and businesslike. "I'm getting married next week." Lila paused. "I heard. Congratulations." Yeah, thanks," Cassandra replied with no sincerity. "Look, we're short on staff for the reception. I figured I'd offer you a chance to work. You need it, right?" Lila blinked. "Work? You want me to be staff at your wedding? Don't make it weird," Cassandra said quickly. "You're not coming as a guest. Obviously. Just help out bussing tables. Clearing plates, you know. What you're used to." Lila swallowed hard. "I see. Good. Arrive 2 hours early. Wear all black. Oh, and keep Noah at home. We don't need distractions." A call ended before Lila could respond. She sat still for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the dusty mirror above the sink. Her blonde hair was tied loosely at the back. She looked tired. Older than 26. She turned to see Noah, her 2-year-old son, curled on the faded couch, holding his stuffed rabbit asleep. Her heart clenched. She didn't care about Cassandra's mockery, didn't care about being made to serve at her own sister's wedding. All she cared about was one small hope that Noah might, for a brief moment, glimpse the kind of family gathering he deserved to know existed. A week later, Lila showed up early at the venue as instructed. The hall was extravagant, dressed in ivory drapes, golden candlelight, and soft classical music echoing from a grand piano. She wore a plain black blouse and slacks, her hair pulled tightly into a bun. The event coordinator barely looked at her when handing her a name tag and pointing her toward the service station. The staff buzzed around her, setting up trays and champagne flutes. Lila moved silently through the motions, polishing glasses, folding glass napkins. She kept her head down. Cassandra walked by once, her makeup flawless, her laughter ringing out like champagne glass chimes. She didn't glance at Lila. Later, during a short break, Lila found a quiet corner behind the kitchen door and pulled the invitation from her pocket. The thick, cream envelope had her name scrawled in small cursive at the bottom of a long list of instructions. She read the fine print again: kitchen help. Arrive early. Her name wasn't on the guest list. She wasn't family. She was function. Lila's chest tightened. She folded the card slowly and slid it back into her pocket. Then she stood, adjusted her sleeves, and walked back into the reception hall silent. Invisible, but determined to hold her dignity, even if no one else there saw it. The reception hall shimmered with golden lights. Crystal chandeliers cast their glow over polished silverware and white linen-covered tables. Lila moved silently through the room, dressed in her black server uniform, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her posture straight, her steps careful. She adjusted a row of champagne glasses, making sure they were evenly spaced, and folded the last napkin with precision. The clinking of silverware and soft murmur of conversation created a strange symphony around her, one she was clearly not part of. She kept her eyes low. Her presence was meant to be invisible, a shadow on the edge of her sister's perfect day. Just as she turned to retrieve a tray, a voice from behind interrupted the delicate rhythm of her quiet work. "Excuse me," a woman asked politely. "Aren't you the bride's sister?" Lila froze. She hadn't expected to be recognized. She turned slowly to face the older woman. A distant relative maybe, one of their father's cousins. Before Lila could respond, Cassandra's voice rang out sharply from across the room. "She was Cassandra," she said, approaching with a flute of champagne in hand and a perfect smile that didn't reach her eyes. "She used to be. Now she's just tough." A few guests nearby turned their heads. The room didn't fall silent, but the tension spread quickly, like a spilled drink across white linen. Lila kept her mouth shut, her face neutral, even as her cheeks burned. "Oh," the guest murmured, clearly uncomfortable. It's all right," Cassandra said, brushing a hand through her styled hair. "She's used to being overlooked. Right, Lila?" Lila didn't respond. She turned back to her tray, but Gloria's voice cut through next. Louder, firmer, echoing through the open space. Frankly, Gloria said from her table, raising her glass slightly, we'd all be better off if no one remembered her at all. Lila is the kind of mistake families try to forget. The air shifted. Conversations paused. Laughter faltered. Heads turned. Lila's hand trembled as she steadied the tray. Her breath caught in her throat. For a brief second, she considered running. Just then, a small voice cried out, "Mama!" Noah he had slipped from the back room where one of the kitchen staff had agreed to watch him for a few hours. His chubby legs carried him across the dance floor as fast as he could manage, his little shoes squeaking on the polished marble. He wrapped his arms around her leg, looking up at her with a bright, innocent smile. Lila crouched down, scooped him into her arms, and pressed her cheek to his head. The room burst into soft laughter, but it wasn't kind. Oh, how precious," a woman said mockingly. "Staff and entertainment, she even brought the kid to work," another added. Gloria stood and placed her champagne flute down with a deliberate clink. "Can someone please remove that child before he ruins the decor? This is a wedding, not a daycare center." The murmurs grew louder, the chorus of judgment layered with mockery. Lila held Noah tighter. "Some people don't know their place," Cassandra said loudly, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Lila rose to her feet slowly, still holding her son. Her eyes scanned the crowd. So many familiar faces, now twisted by condescension and laughter. For 1 second, she met her father's gaze. He looked away. She turned toward the kitchen, determined to leave with what dignity she had left. But behind her, the whispers continued, sharp and cruel. She should be ashamed. No wonder they don't speak of her. Did you hear she doesn't even know who the father is? The laughter followed her as she walked, each step heavier than the last. But Lila didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She simply held her son close and walked through the noise. Silent but unbroken, Lila moved through the bustling kitchen with the grace of someone used to going unnoticed. In her hand was a paper napkin folded around a small piece of wedding cake she had quietly picked from a half-eaten plate. It was just a corner, a bit of frosting, but enough for Noah to feel included, enough to make him smile. She pushed open the heavy staff lounge door and stepped inside. The space was dim and quiet, a sharp contrast to the grandeur outside. Noah was curled up on the small bench in the corner, hugging his stuffed rabbit. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "Hey, sweetheart," Lila whispered, kneeling down. "Look what Mama brought you." She unfolded the napkin carefully and placed the cake in his small hands. He squealed softly with excitement and dug in, frosting smearing on his fingers. Lila watched him with a tender smile, her heart aching with the beauty and sadness of the moment. Just then, the door creaked open behind her. A man in a navy blue suit stepped inside. He was middle-aged, clearly a guest, though not someone Lila recognized. He paused, watching the scene. "That's your boy?" he asked gently. Lila nodded, standing slowly. "Yes, sir. He's adorable," the man said. He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a folded bill, offering it to her with a kind expression. Here, buy him something sweet later." Lila blinked, then she shook her head. "Thank you, but no." The man looked surprised. "It's just a gift. I'm sorry," she said softly, "but I'm not selling myself just because we're hungry." Her words hung in the air, dignified and quiet. The man's expression shifted to respect. He nodded and tucked the bill away, then exited without another word. Unbeknownst to either of them, the wedding photographer had been walking past the open doorway and snapped a photo of the moment. The mother, the child, the money refused. He later posted it online with the caption, "Some dignity can't be bought. Remember her." By the time the photo began to spread across social media, Lila had returned to her duties. Cassandra found out within the hour. A bridesmaid showed her the photo on her phone. Within minutes, she was seething. "She made me look heartless," Cassandra hissed. "She's hijacking my wedding with her sob story." She stormed into the lounge where Lila was wiping Noah's mouth. "You think you're a saint now? The poor little waitress who turned down a tip for her bastard child? You're humiliating me in front of the elite." Lila stood, shielding Noah instinctively. "I didn't ask for attention. I was just feeding my son." Well, you've fed enough, Cassandra growled. Get out. You've done enough damage. Before Lila could answer, Noah ran toward her and tripped over a rug near the doorway. In an instant, he collided with a passing waiter, knocking over a full tray of water. A cascade of clear liquid splashed across Cassandra's white designer gown. There was a collective gasp from the hallway. Cassandra stared down at the stain, speechless for half a second, then screamed, "My dress. It's ruined. This is a $12 Zaro gown." Gloria came marching in like a general. "What happened?" "She threw water on me," Cassandra shouted, pointing at Lila. "I didn't." Lila tried to explain. "She's sabotaging everything," Cassandra wailed. Gloria's face hardened. "Enough. Get her out of here." A pair of venue security guards approached. "No, no. Please, please," Lila begged, backing away while holding Noah. "You and that child have no place here," Gloria snapped. "Drag them out now." One guard grabbed Lila's arm roughly. The other tried to take Noah from her. Lila twisted away, stumbling. "Mama!" Noah screamed, tears bursting from his eyes. Lila fell hard onto the marble floor. Her elbow slammed against the edge of a chair, tearing her sleeve. Blood smeared across her arm. The rip in her uniform exposed her scraped skin. Gasps echoed around the room, but no one stepped forward. "Keep moving," Gloria barked. The guards pulled her up, dragging her toward the exit. Noah clung to her, wailing. And in that brutal moment, in that image of a mother bloodied and broken, her child screaming in terror, every cruel whisper became reality. Lila was no longer just ignored. She was thrown out, cast aside like something dirty. But fate hadn't finished writing this night. Because just as the grand doors creaked open and she was pushed into the cool night air, someone else was walking up the steps. And he had seen everything. The heavy doors groaned open as the guards pushed Lila and Noah toward the exit. Her hair was disheveled, her uniform torn at the elbow where blood still trickled, and her arms trembled as she held her crying son close. Just as one of the guards reached to open the last door to the street, a sharp, commanding voice cut through the chaos like a lightning bolt. "Do not touch her," the words echoed with authority. Everyone froze. The guards turned first, followed by Gloria, Cassandra, and a dozen wide-eyed guests craning their necks toward the entrance. A sleek black luxury sedan had just pulled up outside, its headlights still glowing. From the back seat emerged a tall, impeccably dressed man in a charcoal gray suit. His presence seemed to silence the very air itself. Daniel Rhodes. The name murmured through the room like a ripple in still water. He stepped forward, calm but with an unmistakable fire in his eyes. His sharp jawline and dark eyes gave him a magnetic, dangerous elegance. Guests parted like waves as he walked through them, ignoring the stares and whispers, until he reached Lila and Noah. "Lila," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "Are you all right?" She looked up, breathless, still in shock. "Daniel, why are you here?" "I came as soon as I saw the post. I should have been here earlier." He took off his pocket square and gently wrapped it around her bleeding elbow. Then, without hesitation, he lifted Noah into his arms and turned toward the crowd. Noah clung to him like he had always known this man. Daniel looked at the guards. "Let her go. Now." The guards hesitated. Gloria stepped forward, indignant. "Excuse me, who exactly do you think you are? This is a private event." He stood tall, his voice cool but full of steel. "Daniel Rhodes, founder of Rhodes Capital. The man who funded this venue, the floral company, the caterers, the wine selection, and the honeymoon suite. Every contract tied to this wedding bears my signature." The silence that followed was thunderous. Gloria blinked. I didn't know you were attending. I was supposed to arrive earlier, but my flight was delayed. And yet somehow, I arrived just in time to witness you throw the mother of my future child out like garbage." Cassandra gasped. "Future child?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Yes. Lila is the woman I love. And if anyone here has the audacity to insult her again, I will personally ensure every vendor pulls out of this wedding effective immediately." The room erupted with shocked gasps. "You wouldn't dare," Gloria whispered, her face drained of color. Daniel turned to her, dead serious. "Try me." He then turned to the stunned guests. His voice now louder, steadier. Let me be very clear. Lila is not just some waitress. She is a survivor, a mother, a woman who's worked harder than any of you could imagine to give her son a life of dignity. She didn't crash this wedding. She was invited to work by a sister who treated her like filth. And yet she still came, because she wanted her son to believe in family even if no one here treated her like one. Lila's lips parted, tears rising in her eyes. Not from humiliation, but from something she hadn't felt in years: protection. Daniel faced Cassandra next. And you let your own sister serve drinks at your wedding, then turned on her in front of your guests. That's not just cruel, that's disgraceful. Cassandra stammered, her voice brittle. You don't understand. No, he interrupted. You will. Because this ends now. He turned back to Lila and held out his hand. Come with me. Lila stared at him, stunned. She stood slowly, her hands still trembling. Daniel handed Noah back to her gently, and together they turned to leave. As they passed Gloria, she hissed under her breath, "You're ruining everything." Daniel glanced at her. Ice cold. No, him saving the only part of this night that ever mattered. And with that, they stepped outside into the fresh air, leaving behind the glittering ballroom full of stunned silence and the ruins of Cassandra's perfect wedding. Daniel led Lila and Noah into the quiet of the courtyard, away from the murmurs that still buzzed behind the ballroom doors. The sky had darkened, the first stars glinting faintly overhead. But the courtyard lights bathed them in a warm, golden hue. Daniel offered Lila a seat on the stone bench, and she sat down slowly, Noah resting against her chest, thumb in his mouth. She looked up at Daniel, still dazed. Why did you come? Why did you say all of that? He knelt before her, his voice low and steady. Because it is the truth. And because I owe you more than you'll ever know. She shook her head. You don't owe me anything. He smiled faintly. Yes, I do. You just don't remember. Lila frowned in confusion. Daniel looked toward the ground for a moment, as if gathering courage, then met her eyes again. A year ago, I walked into this very restaurant. Not as Daniel Rhodes. Not as a millionaire. I came dressed in a chef's curtain hat, part of an internal audit. I was testing staff integrity, empathy, humanity. Most people ignored me. Some were rude, a few were polite. But only one person really saw me. Lila's lips parted slightly. You, he continued. You saw a tired man on a late shift. You brought me water without asking. And when you saw me struggling with my tray, you split your lunch with me, a simple sandwich, half a muffin. You didn't know who I was. You didn't even ask. I don't remember, she whispered. He smiled gently. That's exactly why it mattered. Lila sat still, tears pooling quietly in her eyes. Daniel looked around, then rose to his feet and turned back toward the ballroom. Voice raised so the crowd just beyond the threshold could hear him. You all see me as a man of success, power, money, but none of that gave me peace. For years I was surrounded by luxury, but hollow inside. It was a tired woman in a stained apron, feeding someone she thought was a struggling kitchen worker, who reminded me what it means to care. She gave me something no deal, no merger, no empire ever could. He looked back at Lila. She gave me trust. She gave me hope. Inside, the tension shifted. Gloria, standing rigid near the doors, opened her mouth to object, but her voice trembled. Cassandra, red-faced, stepped forward. What is this? Some dramatic performance? She was nothing before this night. You think she's going to become some kind of a millionaire's wife? Seriously? Her laugh was sharp and bitter. She doesn't belong in our world. Daniel turned slowly, his voice calm but unyielding. And that's exactly why she deserves it. She doesn't care about status. She never once tried to climb. She helped without expecting anything. She's already richer in the things that matter than most people in that room. Cassandra scoffed. You're throwing away everything for her? Daniel stepped forward. I'm choosing the one person who made me feel human again. If that's throwing something away, then good riddance. The murmurs inside the hall began to shift, no longer whispers of judgment, but of admiration. One by one, a few guests stood, then more to thank you for joining me. A slow ripple of applause began to build until the whole room was clapping. Lila looked through the open doors in disbelief. People, elegant, polished people, were clapping for her. Suddenly, the manager of the restaurant emerged from the crowd, moving quickly toward them. A man in his 60s, with salt and pepper hair and a stiff bout eye, stopped before Lila, eyes full of shame. "Miss Lila," he said solemnly, bowing slightly, "please accept my sincerest apologies. I did not recognize your importance, both to Mr. Rhodes and to this place. It was my failure." She blinked, unsure what to say. "Had I known," he continued, "I would never have allowed you to be treated that way. You are clearly the most important person in our owner's life." Lila's voice wavered. "I don't need titles or special treatment. I just wanted to feed my son." Daniel stepped beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "And in doing that, you reminded me what it means to truly live." The applause swelled again, echoing across the courtyard like music. But Lila no longer heard it. She looked up at Daniel, truly looked, and for the first time in years, she smiled, a real smile, one born not of relief but of being seen and chosen. Daniel gently led Lila and little Noah back into the grand reception hall, past the stunned guests, the marble pillars, the scattered petals, and the orchestra that had long since quieted. The whispers faded as all eyes turned to them. This mother, once dismissed, now returning like a queen, with her prince in her arms and a king at her side. Without a word, Daniel guided her to the head table, the place of honor once reserved for Gloria. He pulled out the ornate chair, helped Lila sit, and then lifted Noah onto her lap. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Gloria, still lingering near the stage, looked as though she'd been physically slapped. Her seat, her power, now belonged to the woman she had called a disgrace. Daniel stepped aside and picked up the microphone from the podium. He tapped it. At once, the feedback crackled lightly. "I'd like to give the floor to someone who deserves it far more than I do," he said, simply turning toward Lila. Lila's eyes widened, but Daniel nodded gently. She took a deep breath, then stood slowly. A torn sleeve had been patched with Daniel's handkerchief. Her cheeks were flushed, but her chin was high. She walked up to the podium and looked out at the guests who had laughed at her, ignored her, whispered behind her back, and then she looked at Noah, who reached for her with a gummy smile. "My name is Lila," she began, voice steady despite the trembling inside. "Some of you may know me as the waitress or the kitchen help. Some may know me as the woman who was asked to serve at her own sister's wedding." She paused. No one moved. "I've been called a burden, a stain, a failure. But let me tell you what I truly am." She looked down at Noah, her voice softening. "I'm a mother. And this boy, this beautiful, bright boy, is not my shame. He is my light. My reason for waking up every morning. No matter how cold, how hungry, how alone." Noah clapped once, then giggled. A few smiles broke out among the guests. "I'm not here to chase wealth," Lila continued, "or titles, or revenge. I don't need to sit at your tables to know my worth. But today, just for once, I ask for respect. Not pity, not favor. Just the simple acknowledgement that I'm a human being. A woman, a mother, and that's more than enough." A hush fell over the hall. Different now. Not discomfort, but reverence. At the far end of the table, Mr. David, Lila's father, rose slowly. His face, long passive and neutral, was crumpled with emotion. His eyes were red, his lips trembled as he approached. "I should have protected you," he said, his voice hoarse. "I let others decide how I treated my own daughter. I was weak. And I'm sorry, Lila, from the depths of my soul. I'm sorry." Lila blinked, shocked. For years, he had stood by silently while others broke her spirit. And now here he was, breaking down in front of everyone. His apology was raw and long overdue. She gave him a slow nod. Nothing more needed to be said. Noah, now squirming in Daniel's arms, reached out toward the microphone. Daniel chuckled and handed it to him for a moment. And then it happened. Noah leaned close to the mic, gripped it clumsily with both chubby hands, and blurted, "Daddy." The word echoed through the hall like a cannon blast. Lila froze. Daniel's eyes widened. then soften with tears. A gasp rose from the crowd, some shocked, others deeply moved. Cassandra scoffed. But it was too late. The sound of applause followed almost instantly. Noah wiggled happily, arms outstretched toward Daniel. Completely unaware of the storm he had just quieted with a single word, Daniel stepped forward, took Noah into his arms, and kissed the boy's forehead. "He's got perfect timing," he whispered, his voice thick as the applause continued. Daniel took Lila's hand, their fingers lacing together naturally, and in that moment, under the golden chandeliers and flickering candlelight, something greater than ceremony or spectacle filled the room. Something real. "What to thank you for joining me. Something like love." 1 week after the wedding disaster, the full video from the reception was broadcast on national television, edited from several angles. Guest cell phones, the venue's security footage, and the wedding photographer's clips. It told a story that gripped the country, not of romance between the bride and groom, but of cruelty, courage, and an unexpected hereaway waitress with a torn sleeve and a little boy who called a billionaire daddy. The segment aired on morning talk shows, evening news specials, and viral TikTok recaps. By midday, hashtags began trending: "Justice for Lila," "Mother with Honor," "From Waitress to Queen." The internet erupted in support. Comment sections overflowed with empathy, outrage, and admiration. Women shared their own stories of being belittled and underestimated. Men praised Daniel's fierce defense and humility. Mothers everywhere saw themselves in Lila's tearful speech and unwavering love. And the backlash was immediate for the ones who deserved it. Gloria, once a staple in local charity boards and high society fundraisers, found herself blacklisted overnight. Sponsors pulled out from her fashion events. Philanthropic contracts were terminated. Her publicist quit. Her once perfect facade crumbled as video clips of her sneering at Lila were reposted with captions like "the real evil stepmother." Cassandra fared no better. Investigative bloggers digging into her sudden rise in the influencer world uncovered forged transcripts from an elite culinary school. Brand deals vanished. A fan base abandoned her. An interview she gave to defend herself only made things worse. As she came off dismissive and bitter, the world had made up its mind. Cassandra was not the star of the wedding, she was the villain. Meanwhile, Lila's life transformed. Daniel, true to his word, launched the Lila Grace Foundation, a scholarship program for single mothers pursuing vocational training or higher education. "Women like Lila," he said in the press release, "deserve more than charity. They deserve opportunity, dignity, and a chance to rewrite their stories." Lila once, overwhelmed but deeply moved, decided to turn her quiet strength into something more. She started a small YouTube channel, Meals with Mama Lila, where she shared easy, affordable recipes for struggling families. Her first video, Noah sitting on the counter, giggling as she stirred soup, got over 2 million views in a week. Her second video opened with the words, "I used to scrub pots in this kitchen. Now I cook for people who need comfort, hope, and love." Brands began to reach out not for exploitative deals, but collaborations rooted in authenticity. Moms across America subscribed not because of the viral fame, but because they saw something real, a woman who had once been them. Daniel stood quietly behind her success, never overshadowing her light. He appeared in only a few videos, usually in the background chopping vegetables or washing dishes, occasionally making Noah laugh with funny faces. Lila became more than a symbol. She became a movement, from waitress to warrior, from forgotten sister to beloved mother, from humiliation to honor. And in every comment section, every media headline, every message of support, one thing was clear: the world had watched a woman rise. And she did not rise alone. She carried a son on her hip, a heart full of grace, and a love that turned even the coldest ballroom into a home. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a golden sheen across the quaint garden behind the restaurant where it had all begun, a place once filled with the clatter of dishes and whispered orders, now transformed into something sacred. Fairy lights twinkled gently between the tree branches, and the scent of blooming jasmine danced through the late summer air. There were no white doves, no designer gowns, no red carpets or celebrity photographers, just 20 or so people gathered in wooden chairs, forming a circle of warmth around Lila, Daniel, and little Noah. Lila stood beneath a modest arch made of ivy and wildflowers, her blonde hair in soft waves, a simple linen and rest hugging her frame. She wore no veil, no jewels, just a quiet glow in her eyes that had nothing to do with makeup and everything to do with healing. Daniel wore a navy blue suit, sleeves rolled just slightly, his boutonniere hand picked by Noah that morning, a crooked daisy and a sprig of mint. As he watched Lila approach, hand in hand with her son, he swore he had never seen anything more perfect. The officiant gave a gentle nod, and the hush fell over the gathering. But before the ceremony could begin, Noah, with determined little steps and a serious look on his face, walked up to Daniel holding a tiny satin pillow. On it, tied with ribbon, were two simple silver bands. The guest chuckled softly, some wiping away tears already. Daniel bent down on one knee, not because tradition asked it, but because his heart did. He looked up at Lila, took her hand, and whispered, "I know you never needed saving. I know you were strong long before I ever showed up. But I also know that since the moment I saw you again, you've been the heartbeat I didn't know I was missing." Lila's lips trembled, her free hand over her chest. "You don't need a fancy title. You've never asked for anything. But if you'll have me, I'd be honored to call you my wife, not because I can offer you riches, but because you've already given me more than I thought I'd ever deserve." A soft wind rustled through the leaves, and Noah giggled as he sat cross-legged in the grass. Watching, Lila wiped a tear from her cheek and dropped to her knees with him, so she and Daniel were eye to eye. "You gave us a place," she said, "but more than that. You gave my son someone to look up to, and me someone to lean on, not because I'm weak, but because even strong women need soft places to fall." She leaned in and kissed him. Gentle, "What thank you for joining me." Grateful, grateful, whole. The officiant smiled and stepped forward. "By the power of love, of second chances, and the fierce strength of family, I now pronounce you partners for life." The guests rose in applause, not thunderous, but full, like rain on parched soil. Behind them, near the garden gate, stood a small wooden sign, newly carved, that read, "Lila's table where dignity is always on the menu." It had been Daniel's idea, turning the garden into a community kitchen where single mothers could gather, learn, cook, and eat without fear of judgment. But he insisted on naming it after the woman who had once scraped frosting off plates in silence and had now become a voice for thousands. As the sun slipped behind the city skyline, the newlyweds danced barefoot on the grass, with Noah running circles around them, his laughter ringing out into the warm evening like the sweetest music of all. There was no orchestra, no paparazzi, just one family born not from perfection, but from resilience. And as the stars began to appear overhead, Lila looked at her son, then at her husband, and whispered softly to herself, This is everything. And so I decide you for joining me." From a kitchen corner to a garden filled with light, Lila's journey reminds us all, dignity is not something given by status, but something earned through love, courage, and unshakable grace. She was once invisible. Now she is unforgettable. Because sometimes, it's not the most glamorous wedding that makes the headlines, it's the one that heals the heart.